There is in it the idea of the fall. Taking this ghastly risk is the condition of there being life. You see, for all, the life is an act of faith and an act of gamble. The moment you take a step, you do so on an act of faith because you don't really know that the floor is not going to give under your feet. The moment you take a journey, what an act of faith. The moment you enter into any kind of human undertaking in relationship, what an act of faith. See, you've given yourself up. But this is the most powerful thing that can be done. Surrender. That's quite mad, because you see, it's letting things get out of control. All sensible people keep things in control. So we come to the strange conclusion that in madness lies sanity.
What is up, YouTube? Live via satellite here, and today we are talking Kingdom, manga chapter 575. And really, Osen's still playing games, huh? I mean, we get it. We get it, Osen. You are mysterious, okay? But could you please let us in on something here? I mean, God. I mean, we've been going through this for about 60 chapters. Like, we still have no clue what Osen's up to. It's like, it's maddening. But maybe this chapter gave us a couple of clues. We'll take a look at it. But to be honest, I just want to know, what the hell is Osen's plan? Because I'm really getting tired of trying to play detective.
What is this?
Oh no, it's scrunchy.
No, what is this? Is this a piece of hair?
Yeah, it's your
You
hair,
see
baby.
that? It's blonde. No, it's blonde.
It look black to me. It's yours, baby.
Okay.
You got a fucking black light? Is you CSI?
You said this was my hair?
Yeah, that's your hair.
Okay, so the chapter starts out with us basically picking up right where we left off. And the funny thing here is, like last chapter, I could have swore that Heki was gonna, bring something to the table here. I thought he had something important to tell Yotanwa. But it turns out, in typical Heki fashion, what he has to tell them is that he doesn't remember anything from when he killed Rosa. And when I first read this, man, I could totally relate to Kitari's reaction. I mean, I don't know who was laughing harder, myself or her. But Yotanwa bails him out, saying it just shows how desperate we were. And as she compliments Heki on a job well done, saying that he's proven himself to be a man, Heki can't help but to blush with joy that Yotanwa has finally acknowledged his greatness. But this feeling of ecstasy doesn't last long, as Yotanwa also lets him in on the fact that when he had his food burned, it made her so mad that she honestly thought about cutting his head off. But now, after what he was able to accomplish, she's glad she stayed her hand. This had me rolling, man. Yotanwa doesn't really know how to properly give a toast, does she?
Corey said he loved this girl forever, but as an umpire, he was known for his bad calls, so we'll see.
Then I guess Shunmin must have bumped his head in this chapter, because he comes in along with Taijifu talking about Baggio has breathed his last breath. And I'm sure after many of your hearts dropped and we see the reactions of Yotanwa and Kitari, Shunmin has the nerve to say that he was just joking and that Baggio should actually probably be fine. And after this, he proceeds to be stomped down as he should be. Like, I don't know what part of that he actually thought was a good idea. And just looking over these next few scenes, you could just tell that the mood is lighthearted and that everyone is just so glad that they were able to come out victorious. And Heki himself so overwhelmed with how intense the past 10 days were, and with such relief that they actually pulled it off, overcome with emotions, begins to sob just like this.
I, Robert, take you, Sarah.
I, Robert, take you, Sarah.
To be my wife.
To be my wife.
From this day forward, for better for worse.
Then we move over to more serious conversations, and it's a little bit of an info drop, letting us know exactly what happened with Sun Suiju. So pretty much what we learn is that it's not a good idea for Sun Suiju to head toward Gyo, because if he did that, Yotanwa and her forces would be able to strike him from the rear. So what he decides to do instead is head toward Retsubi, which is the entrance to Western Sao. There he plans to just wait it out and trap the Shin forces inside. this alone is enough to tip Sensuiju's hand to Yotanwa. This play automatically lets her know that Sensuiju is confident that Gyo will not fall. And while all of this info is beginning to sink in everybody's heads, one of her men lets her know that the Figo King and Old Man Impo are beginning to make a ruckus, because as the stars of the battle, they want some attention from Yotanwa too. And if they'd be satisfied from a pat on the head, you can only imagine how Shin is feeling right now, who has just endured this entire time being a stool for Yotanwa. Even though this is known as Friendzone level 99, I think I'm starting to realize what Shin's plan was in pissing Yotanwa off. He's going to be able to talk so much crap to Impo and the Figo King, because in his own twisted way, he's the closest one to the Nethers. They're gonna be so jealous.
Peter, would you stop being so jealous? I dated Ross 20 years ago.
That's right, and that means he had you first, Lois. I'll always be Scottie Pippen to his Michael Jordan.
Ladies and gentlemen, Michael Jordan! And Scottie Pippen. He's also good.
But as Yotanwa's leaving, she does point out that these are just Sensuiju's predictions, and that all they need to do is sit there and believe in their comrades in the fall of Gyo. Which Kitari agrees with, saying that this really doesn't change any of their plans. All they really have to do is keep their eyes on Sensuiju to make sure that he doesn't try to pull any fast ones, while at the same time recovering their strength in case something else comes up. But as Yotanwa was walking away, saying that for now everyone can just enjoy their hard-earned victory, we can see that Heki has too much on his mind to be able to relax. Because he knows that even though their food problems are solved, that doesn't account for the other two armies. And even if they wanted to get food to them, the Zhao army has the roads locked down so tight that they can barely get a message through, let alone trying to move wagons full of food. And as Heki's lost in thought, wondering how the other armies are doing, especially Shin, who he's putting all his trust in, Kitari out of nowhere, as if she knows that Heki is freaking out, gives him a little love tap in a side that was blasted by the Kwangrong King. And with the pain clearly bringing Heki back to the moment, Kitari tells Heki in his own language, cheers. And I really kind of like the dynamic that we get when we have Heki and Kitari together. I'm really starting to believe that these two are going to wind up being a thing, and we all know who's going to wear their pants in that relationship. Then we find ourselves back over with Kanki at Gyo, and Kanki's doing what Kanki does, pretty much just chilling. But Marin's doing what Marin does, which is pretty much just worrying. But some of the problems actually appear to be a bit serious, because we see that the food shortages are starting to cause problems. Some of the clans have sneakily been stealing some of the food, while others claim if their rations are cut back any further, then they'll just straight pillage the food stores and take what they want for themselves. And even though Kanki has solutions for these immediate problems, Marin chooses this time to remind Kanki of the more concerning problem that they only have 3 days of food left, and that perhaps it's time for the officers to begin to make a sneaky exit. But Kanki has to hit Marin with the hard truth that in order to run, you must first have a place to run to. And in an almost annoyed manner, Kanki says that Osun's lackeys are sure taking their sweet time. And could they possibly get any slower? And we'll circle back around to this statement at the end of the review, because there are some interesting things that you could take from it. But in the meantime, the story shifted over to the Sukai Plains. And on this battlefield, we already see that the fighting has begun for the 10th day. But what we find out right off the bat is that the Kyokuho unit and the Hishin unit are engaging the enemy without receiving any orders from Osun, which is actually kind of strange, because after the 9th day when Akko was put out of commission after facing off against Bananji and Gyeun, word was sent to Osun that they were no longer in position to offer any effective resistance. But with zero response from Osun, they were forced to face the 10th day with no overseeing commander. And this seems to be having a pretty negative effect, as one of Ten's men even asks her, has Osun chosen to abandon us? But she has to reassure the men just how impossible that is, because if the right wing loses, then the whole battle of the Sukai Plains goes with it. And with all the back and forth going on about why they haven't received orders yet, then we get our first glimpse of Shin.
Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back, welcome back.
And by the looks of his face, he seems to be pretty annoyed by the situation too. But with his infantry struggling, he doesn't have time to worry about that, as he calls his cavalry on him and enters into the battle as only Shin can. But all the while thinking about how they've started the day in the worst possible ways, not being sure and having to wait for further directions. Continuing on saying that if you can't think of a good way to deal with this, then couldn't you at least just send an order like fight them off to the best of your ability or something? Just what the hell is General Osun thinking? And that was the chapter in a nutshell, guys. Alright, so I thought that was a pretty good chapter of Kingdom. I mean, it was pretty much just wrapping up all the things on the Yotanwa and Heki side of the battlefield. And what I really liked about this wrap up is that we pretty much see that Sensuiju is going to be out of the picture for the remainder of this battle. And in our last review, I thought that might be the case, but what I didn't think was going to happen was that Yotanwa and Heki would also be eliminated from the battle. And I really liked that Hara decided to cut them off from the battle, because now we're going to have to see each battlefield fend for themselves without any hope of anybody coming to their aid. So now with Yotanwa and Heki out of the equation for being able to help out with the food shortage, it's gonna make things a lot more interesting, because now we'll actually get to see like what Osun's plan actually was. Because all the stuff that happened on Yotanwa's side of the battlefield really couldn't be accounted for in Osun's original plan. Like, I'm sure Osun never planned for Yotanwa to capture Ryoyu and have an additional food supply. Because had Heki never gotten his burnt, they would have still been in pretty decent shape, at least according to Osun's original plan. So I really like that Hara eliminated them from the equation, because now that's going to allow for Osun to shine and for us to see what he had planned since the beginning. Alright, so when it comes to what Osun's actual plan is, like, we have no clue. But one little thing we did get this chapter that can give us a little bit of things to speculate is what Kanki actually said. And what I'm talking about is when Kanki said that Osun's lackeys are taking their sweet time. Now you could look at this two ways. Either he's talking about the fact that Osun and his armies are taking too long to deal with Riboku and do whatever he was aiming to accomplish. Or you can take it pretty literally that Kanki's talking about specific people who are under Osun doing something for Osun. And the one thing that came to mind when I was thinking about this was the theory that people were having way back at the beginning of the battle when Osun was having all the surrounding cities flow into Gyo, and it looked like he was planning to starve them out by overpopulating the city. A lot of people back then did say that perhaps Osun snuck some of his own people into the city at that time. So maybe these are the guys that Kanki's talking about, and perhaps it doesn't even matter how much food Gyo has. If, let's say, these guys intend to burn the food down or maybe lower the bridges from the inside, who knows? But I would have to say the most interesting thing that happened this chapter is that Osun isn't sending any orders. This is pretty weird. I don't understand why he's not sending the orders, especially because I could have swore with Akko being down that he would at least promote Shin and Ohan to like temporary generals. But with that seemingly not being the case, I can only imagine that Osun maybe intends to either show up, or maybe he doesn't want the orders to be intercepted, or maybe he sent the orders and they were intercepted. And even though I think those things are kind of unlikely, there really just doesn't seem to be any real explanation. The only thing that you can think is that Osun must have some huge play hitting up his sleeve. So yeah, we'll just have to wait and see what happens, but it was just so cool this chapter to finally see Shin and the rest of the other characters, man. It's been so long since we actually seen them. It was actually a shame that we didn't get to spend more time with them this chapter, but we had a little more wrap up to do on the other side, and with that all out the way, I think we're in store for a lot of epic things to come with the conclusion of this arc. But anyway, guys, let's move on to the comment of the week. And this week's comment comes from Eisen2468. And what he says is, I'm a new fan of your vids, having only joined after the purge. But your content is fantastic, man. Loving your vids and hope more of them come back soon. First off, thanks, man. I really appreciate that. But the thing that made me laugh about this comment was what he said about the purge. Because like 2 or 3 months ago, guys, when I got those couple of strikes, man, I put all the videos to private. But there is good news that I never even got to tell you guys, man. I fought those strikes and I got them removed. So we currently have 0 strikes on the channel, and I did put up some of the older videos, and I could put up more, but we'll see, because I really don't feel like dealing with more strikes. It's pretty much a headache. But knock on wood, we're good for now. But anyway guys, that about does it for this week's review. Let me know what you guys thought of the chapter in the comment section below. Please leave a like if you guys enjoyed the video, and feel free to share, comment, and subscribe. Peace out.